y almost quitter everything.
Have you ever felt so tired of trying that even your dreams start whispering, maybe this isn't for you? That was me. Standing in a small apartment in the United States, staring at a window covered in thin ice, asking myself one quiet question, is marriage about leading or walking together? And under that question was another one I didn't dare to say out loud. Was I strong enough to survive here? This video is not just about love. It is not just about learning English. It is about the space between two people who once believed love would fix everything, and the moment they realized love is not about fixing, it is about partnering. If you are learning English and feeling slow, embarrassed, or invisible, I know that feeling. I lived it. And in that silence, I almost quit everything. When I first moved to America, I believed effort would be enough. I thought if I studied hard, spoke bravely, and smiled often, life would open like a movie scene. Instead, I found myself in a country where the air felt different, the humor felt different, even the way people said "How are you?" felt different. They said it fast. They said it casually. And I answered too long, too serious, too careful. At home, my marriage was also adjusting. Two strong personalities. Two cultures.
Two expectations.
In my mind, marriage meant sacrifice. In my partner's mind, marriage meant independence plus teamwork. I thought someone had to lead. He thought we should walk side by side. That difference sounds small, but small differences become big when language is weak. English was not just a language. It was a mirror. When I could not explain my feelings clearly, I felt smaller. When I searched for words during arguments, I felt slower. Research in psychology shows that language fluency directly affects self-esteem and social confidence. When your brain struggles to process vocabulary, your stress response increases.
Your heart beats faster.
Your body thinks you are in danger. So when I argued in English, my nervous system was not calm. It was fighting. One night, after a simple misunderstanding about money and future plans, I sat on the edge of the bed and said quietly, "Maybe I am not good at this. Maybe I am not good at marriage. Maybe I am not good at America." That sentence scared me. Because deep inside, I knew the real problem was not intelligence. It was pressure. When you move to a new country, your brain works overtime. New climate.
New social rule.
New systems. According to cognitive load theory, when the brain handles too many unfamiliar variables, performance drops. It does not mean you are incapable. It means you are overloaded. But when you are in the middle of it, it feels personal. At work, I spoke less. I listened more. I trained my ears quietly. I would replay simple conversations in my head. Could you repeat that? I agree. Let's think about it. Short sentences. Clear tone. No drama. Slowly, I realized something important. Confidence does not begin with big vocabulary. It begins with clarity. At home, I started observing our dynamic. During discussions, I waited for direction. I assumed leadership meant strength. But my partner would say, "We decide together." At first, that confused me. In my culture, one person often leads. Here, partnership was not weakness. It was balance.
The real turning point came à call d'evening.
We were cooking. I was quiet again. He stopped and asked, "Why do you look like you're carrying the world alone?" I answered honestly, in simple English.
Because I feel behind.
In language. In life. In us. There was a long pause. Then he said something that changed everything. Marriage is not a competition. It's coordination.
Coordination. Note domination. Note surrendée. Coordination.
That word stayed in my mind. I began to see that my frustration with English and my frustration in marriage were connected. I wanted to be perfect before I spoke. I wanted to be strong before I asked for help. But partnership does not require perfection. It requires participation. So I made one small rule. Every day, I would speak one honest sentence in English about how I felt. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just real.
I am tired today.
I feel nervous about work. I need help.
Small English.
Real emotion. Something interesting happened. The more I spoke simply, the calmer I felt. Neuroscience explains this clearly. When we label emotions with language, the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, reduces activity.
Naming feeling lower stress.
So my English practice became emotional regulation practice. And in marriage, something softened. I stopped trying to win arguments. I started trying to understand. Instead of asking, who is right? I asked, what do we need? That shift is small on the surface. But inside, it is powerful. I did not quit English. I did not quit marriage. I did not quit myself. Instead, I asked a better question. What if leading is not walking ahead, but walking with awareness? Maybe you are watching this because you feel tired too. Maybe you think your accent is too strong. Maybe you think your relationship is too complicated. But what if the problem is not your ability? What if it is just pressure without partnership? That winter night in America, staring at the ice on the window, I realized something simple. I was not behind. I was building. And building takes time. Marriage taught me that partnership is not about who walks faster. It is about who stays when the road feels heavy. And English? English became the bridge, not the barrier. The climate that changed me. If you have never experienced a real American winter, let me paint the picture slowly so your ears can follow every word. The first morning I saw snow in the United States, I thought it was romantic.
White rooftop. Kiestrits. Breeze turning into soft clouds in the air.
It looked like a movie. I smiled and said very clearly, it's beautiful. By the third week, I was not smiling. The cold was not poetic anymore. It was aggressive. The wind did not ask permission. It pushed. It entered through tiny spaces in the window.
It made my DRY, my lips crack, my mood heavy.
I began to understand something important. Climate is not just weather. Climate changes behavior. In warmer regions of the US, people sit outside. They talk longer. They move slower. In colder states, people walk fast. Doors close quickly. Conversations are short. Efficiency becomes survival. I did not realize how much environment shapes communication until I lived inside it. At the same time, inside my marriage, the temperature was also shifting. When I felt emotionally cold, I reacted like the weather. I closed doors quickly. I spoke less.
I protected myself.
My partner, who grew up in a different American region with direct communication style, believed problems should be discussed immediately. Let's talk about it now, he would say. But my instinct was different.
In my culture, silence can mean respect.
Pausing can mean thinking. Here, silence sometimes looked like distance. See how climate and culture quietly enter a relationship? There is research in environmental psychology showing that physical temperature influences emotional perception. When people feel physically cold, they often report feeling socially isolated. It sounds dramatic, but it is measurable. The body and the mind are not separate departments. They cooperate. During that first winter, I was physically cold and emotionally unsure. So I interpreted small disagreements as big threats. If he forgot to text during work, my mind whispered, "Maybe you are alone here." If I misunderstood a joke because of fast English, my brain added, "Maybe you don't belong."
Cold weather outside. Cold fear inside.
One evening, after slipping slightly on icy pavement, I laughed nervously and said, "I don't think I'm built for this climate." He smiled and answered, "No one is built for it. You adapt." Adapt. That word felt both simple and impossible. Adaptation is not immediate. It is gradual exposure. Scientists call it acclimatization. The body slowly adjusts to new temperatures.
The first days feel extreme.
Later, the same temperature feels normal. The brain works the same way with language and culture. But in the middle of discomfort, adaptation feels like failure. I remember sitting in the car before entering a grocery store, practicing one sentence in English, "Where can I find almond milk?" I repeated it slowly. Clear pronunciation.
Calm breathing.
It sounds small, but small victories build resilience. Inside the store, I asked. The employee answered quickly.
You only understood half.
Normally, I would smile politely and leave. That day I tried again. "Sorry, could you say that more slowly?" He did. I understood.
He found the milk.
That was not about milk. That was about temperature control inside my nervous system. Back at home, I started noticing another pattern. When I felt overwhelmed by weather or language, I expected my partner to lead everything. Drive.
Décide. Fixe.
I unconsciously stepped back. But partnership is not seasonal. It does not disappear in winter. One night, while snow covered the streets again, we had a quiet conversation. I said, "Sometimes I feel smaller here." He replied, "You're not smaller. You're adjusting." There is a difference. Feeling small is emotional. Adjusting is temporary. That distinction changed how I saw myself. In southern states, the climate is warmer, conversations are slower, and social warmth feels immediate. In northern states, independence is stronger, privacy is valued. Both are American. Both are real. But if you move between them without understanding the emotional climate, misunderstandings grow. Marriage is similar. Two climates meet. If one person needs discussion now and the other needs reflection first, that is not incompatibility. That is temperature difference. The mistake I almost made was believing discomfort meant danger. But discomfort is often growth in heavy clothing. So I created a small winter ritual. Every morning, I would stand near the window, look at the snow, and say one sentence in English about how I felt. It's cold, but I'm learning. It's hard, but I'm here. I miss home, but I'm building a new one.
Simple grammaire. Honeste émotion.
Clear sound. Training your ears like a native does not only mean listening to podcasts. It means listening to your own voice in a new environment without judgment. Gradually, winter stopped feeling like an enemy. It became a teacher. I learned to layer clothes. I learned to drive carefully on ice. I learned to speak even when unsure. And in marriage, I learned something deeper. When emotional temperature drops, you do not run. You add warmth. Warmth can be one sentence. Warmth can be one question. Warmth can be one hand reaching across the table. Climate changed me, yes. But it did not break me. It showed me that partnership is not about escaping the storm. It is about adjusting your steps so both of you stay balanced on the ice. And sometimes, the cold that scares you the most is simply preparing you to build stronger muscles.
Culture shock inside love.
Imagine discovering that love speaks the same language, but uses completely different subtitles. That was my daily experience in America. When people talk about culture shock, they usually mention food, holidays, or accents. They don't talk enough about what happens inside a marriage when two cultural operating systems quietly run in the background. And trust me, those invisible systems are powerful. In the United States, independence is not just encouraged. It is expected. Children are taught early to say what they think. Teenagers get part-time jobs. Adults move out. Personal space is respected like a law. In my background, closeness often meant involvement. Advice was love. Silence could mean respect. Family decisions were shared widely. Neither is wrong. But when those two systems meet in a kitchen at 9 p.m., trying to decide who will manage finances, culture becomes very personal. One evening, we were discussing future plans. I said, maybe we should ask your parents what they think. He looked surprised. Why? He asked gently. It's our decision. That small why opened a big realization. In his world, autonomy equals maturity.
In mine, consultation égale wisdom.
Psychologists call this the difference between individualistic and collectivist cultures. The United States ranks high in individualism. That means personal choice, personal responsibility, personal boundaries. In collectivist cultures, identity is often connected to family and community. Decisions ripple outward. When I first moved here, I did not fully understand how deeply that difference would affect love. In arguments, I sometimes said, "You should know what I need." In his mind, that was confusing. He believed clear communication is respectful. Tell me, he would say. Don't expect me to guess. At first, that felt cold. But over time, I realized something important. Direct communication is not aggression. It is efficiency. Americans often separate emotion from intention. You can disagree without disrespect. You can say, "I don't agree," and still love the person fully. That was new for me. In my old understanding, disagreement sometimes meant distance. So when he calmly said, "I see it differently," my nervous system reacted like we were in danger. Culture is silent until it is challenged. Another difference appeared in daily routines.
In America, time is structured.
Calendars are sacred.
Plan armed in advance.
If someone says, "Let's have dinner next Thursday at 6, they mean next Thursday at 6. I once invited friends spontaneously the way I used to at home. He asked, "Did we plan this?" I laughed. "No, but it's okay." For me, flexibility meant warmth. For him, structure meant stability. Neither of us was wrong. We were simply translating love through different lenses. Here is something interesting from social psychology. When couples interpret differences as personal flaws, conflict increases. When they interpret them as cultural variations, empathy increases. The label changes the emotional response. Instead of thinking he doesn't care, I began thinking, he communicates differently. That shift reduced tension immediately. I started practicing simple English sentences to clarify expectations. I need more reassurance. Can we decide this together? I feel uncomfortable when plans change suddenly. Clear, calm,
Direct.
and something surprising happened. The more precise my language became, the less dramatic our misunderstandings felt. There is also humor in culture shock. The first time I heard someone say, "Let's do lunch," I thought it was a real invitation. I waited for details. Later, I learned it can sometimes be polite conversation without real scheduling. That small misunderstanding made me feel naive. But instead of feeling embarrassed, I began observing like a student. Culture became a classroom. At social gatherings, Americans often ask, "What do you do?" early in conversation. Work identity matters.
Achievement matters.
Efficiency matters. At first, I felt pressure. My English was still improving. My career was still stabilizing. I felt behind. But over time, I understood that confidence here is often projected, not assumed. People speak positively about themselves because the culture rewards initiative. So I practiced one new habit. When someone asked about my work, instead of minimizing, I said clearly, "I'm building my skills. I'm growing." Simple, honest, strong. Inside marriage, culture shock softened into curiosity. Instead of assuming leadership roles automatically, we discussed them. Instead of silent expectations, we asked questions. Do you prefer planning or flexibility? Do you need space or conversation right now?
Small question prévent big explosion.
And here's the truth I learned slowly. Love across cultures is not about erasing difference. It is about learning choreography. Sometimes you lead.
Sometimes you follow.
But most of the time, you adjust your rhythm. When I stopped viewing American culture as a test I had to pass, and started viewing it as an environment I could understand, my anxiety reduced. The same applied to marriage. Culture shock inside love does not mean incompatibility. It means expansion. Expansion is uncomfortable, but it is also powerful. Because when two systems learn to cooperate instead of compete, something stronger is built.
Not a perfect mariage,
but a conscious partnership. And that is when I began to see clearly, walking together does not require identical steps. It requires shared direction. When English felt heavy. Have you ever noticed how a simple sentence can feel like lifting a heavy suitcase? That was English for me in the beginning. Not grammar. Not vocabulary lists. But real-life English.
fast English, émotionnel English.
The kind people use when they are tired, annoyed, joking, or vulnerable. Textbook conversations are polite. Real conversations are messy. And inside a marriage, messy language matters. At work, I could prepare. I rehearsed phrases before meetings. I wrote emails carefully. I checked spelling twice. But at home, arguments did not wait for preparation. Feelings moved faster than my vocabulary. One night, during a small disagreement about responsibilities, I tried to explain how overwhelmed I felt. My mind had complex thoughts. My heart had strong emotion. My mouth had limited English. I said, I feel too much pressure. Like,
Ikari many things.
He looked confused. Not dismissive.
Just confused.
You mean stressed? He asked. Yes. Stressed. And alone. The word alone came out softer than I expected. And suddenly, the conversation changed. Here is something fascinating from neuroscience. When we cannot express emotions clearly, the brain experiences frustration similar to physical discomfort. It increases cortisol, the stress hormone. That means limited language ability can physically amplify conflict. So sometimes, it was not the problem itself that hurt. It was the delay between what I felt and what I could say. English felt heavy because it carried my identity. In my native language, I was expressive, quick, funny. In English, I was careful, slower, simplified. That gap made me feel smaller in my own home. I remember once trying to tell a story at dinner with friends. By the time I found the right words, the moment had passed. The table had moved on. Laughter faded. I smiled politely, but inside I felt invisible. That invisibility followed me home. In marriage, timing matters. If you respond too late, it can feel like distance. If you respond too briefly, it can feel like indifference. I worried constantly. Did I say enough? Did I say it correctly? Did my tone sound cold? Psychologists explain something called linguistic insecurity. When people operate in a second language, they often over-monitor their speech. This extra mental effort reduces spontaneity and increases self-criticism. That was me. During disagreements, instead of focusing on understanding, part of my brain was editing grammar. That divided attention weakened emotional connection. One evening, after a long day, he asked, "Are you okay?" I wanted to say, I feel disconnected because I'm afraid I can't fully be myself in this language. Instead I said, I'm just tired. Technically true. Emotionally incomplete. Later that night, I sat quietly and made a decision. If I waited to be perfect in English before being honest, I would never feel close again. So I changed my strategy. Instead of complex sentences, I chose clarity. I don't have the right words, but I feel sad.
Am not angry at you. Am frustrated at myself.
I need time to think, but I care about this.
Notice the structure.
Short sentences.
Direct meaning.
No decoration. Something powerful happened. The simpler I spoke, the more he listened. English stopped being a performance. It became a bridge. At work, I applied the same method. In meetings, instead of long explanations, I said, I agree with this point. Or, can we clarify the timeline? Or even, I need a moment to process. Clear communication builds respect in American workplace culture. Directness is valued. Confidence is often measured by clarity, not complexity. Gradually, my ears adapted too. I began watching interviews, not for vocabulary, but for rhythm. I listened to how native speakers paused, where they softened their tone, how they disagreed politely. I see your point, but I think. That makes sense. However, these phrases became tools. Back at home, arguments softened. When tension rose, instead of defending quickly, I practiced one sentence, help me understand. That sentence slowed everything down. There is research from relationship psychology showing that couples who use repair attempts, small phrases that reduce tension, have higher long-term stability. Repair attempts can be simple, a joke, a soft tone, a gentle question. For me, English became a repair tool. Instead of feeling ashamed when I searched for words, I said honestly, I'm trying to say this clearly. That vulnerability created connection. And here is the ironic truth. When I stopped trying to sound advanced, my English improved faster. Why? Because fluency grows from repetition in real context, not from silent perfection. The heaviness I felt at the beginning was not about ability. It was about fear.
Fear of being misunderstood.
Fear of being judged. Fear of losing power in my own marriage. But partnership is not about perfect speech. It is about shared effort. When English felt heavy, I thought it was a barrier between us. Now I see it was weight training. Every awkward sentence strengthened my resilience.
Every misunderstanding improved our patience.
Every correction sharpened clarity. Language did not weaken my marriage. It refined it. And slowly, I realized something simple but life-changing. You do not need perfect English to build strong love. You need honest words and the courage to use them. Lead or walk together. Somewhere between washing dishes and paying bills, I realized we were not arguing about chores. We were arguing about power.
Not loud, dramatic power.
Quiet power.
Invisible leadership.
Who decides? Who adjusts?
Who sacrifice first?
At the beginning of our marriage in the United States, I carried an old belief. In difficult situations, one person must lead. Leadership meant stability. Leadership meant protection. If one person is strong, the other can rest. But life in America did not follow that script. In this culture, partnership is often framed as equality. Shared decisions. Shared responsibility. Shared emotional labor. The idea is not who leads, but how do we coordinate? That difference sounds philosophical. It becomes very practical when you are choosing where to live, how to manage money, or how to balance two careers. One evening, we were discussing a job opportunity for me in another state. It was a good offer. Better salary.
New environment.
But it would require him to adjust his routine. I waited for him to decide. He waited for me to choose.
The silence felt heavy.
Finally, he asked, "What do you want?" I answered carefully, "What do you think is best?" He smiled slightly. That's not the same question. In that moment, I understood something uncomfortable. I was hiding behind him. Not because I was weak, but because I was afraid to own my direction in a new country.
When you live in a second language, uncertainty feel bigger.
If something goes wrong, you fear you will not have the words to fix it. So letting someone else lead feels safer. But safe is not always partnership. Research in relationship psychology shows that healthy couples practice what is called shared influence. This means both partners have equal impact on decisions. When only one person consistently leads, resentment grows silently. I had to ask myself a difficult question. Was I asking for leadership, or was I avoiding responsibility? The answer was not dramatic. It was subtle. I was afraid to make wrong choices in a foreign system. American policies, taxes, work culture, regional differences, everything felt complex. If he decided and it failed, I could say we tried. If I decided and it failed, I would blame myself. But marriage is not a shield for fear. So I tried something new. Instead of asking, "What should we do?" I said, "I think this opportunity aligns with my goals. I'm nervous, but I want to try." My voice was steady.
My grammaire simple.
My ownership clear. He nodded.
Then let's plan it together.
That word together felt different than before. Leading does not mean walking ahead alone. And walking together does not mean losing your voice. In American culture, individual ambition is respected. But so is teamwork. At work, I noticed managers often say, "What's your perspective?" Not because they lack ideas, but because collaboration builds stronger solutions. Marriage is similar. If one person always sacrifices dreams for stability, imbalance forms. If both ignore each other's ambitions, distance forms. Partnership requires active negotiation. Negotiation is not conflict. It is coordination. We began holding what I jokingly called kitchen meetings. No phones.
No distractions. Just toucher and open conversation.
We used clear, structured sentences. I feel excited about this. I'm worried about financial risk. What timeline feels realistic? What support do you need from me? Short.
Direct.
Calm. The more we practiced this style, the less emotional our disagreements became. Not because we loved each other more, but because we communicated more intentionally. There is a concept in behavioral science called locus of control. People with an internal locus believe they influence outcomes. People with an external locus feel controlled by circumstances. In my early months in America, I leaned toward external. New country. New systems. New stress. In marriage, that mindset made me passive. But as my English improved and my understanding of American life deepened, my internal locus strengthened. I stopped saying, "It's too hard here." I started saying, "I can learn this." That shift changed our dynamic. Instead of asking him to lead us through every challenge, I began walking beside him. And here is the surprising part: when I stepped forward, he did not step back. He matched my pace. Partnership is not about symmetry every second. Sometimes one partner is stronger. Sometimes the other is tired. But long-term balance matters. One night, during another discussion about future plans, I said clearly, "I don't want you to carry everything. But I also don't want to disappear." He answered softly, "Then don't disappear." Simple words. Powerful meaning. In that moment, I realized I had confused leadership with love. I thought being led meant being cared for. But being included is deeper than being directed. Walking together requires vulnerability. It requires admitting, "I don't know everything." It requires saying, "I need you, but I am also capable."
In America, indépendance and interdépendance coexistent.
You are expected to stand on your own feet, but you are also encouraged to collaborate. Marriage reflects that balance. So when people ask me now, "Did marriage teach you partnership?" I answer honestly, yes. But not in theory. In practice. Through job decisions.
Trop financial planning. Trop émotional conversation in imperfect English.
Leadership is sometimes necessary in emergencies. But in everyday life, walking together builds strength that leading alone never can.
And the real surprise?
The moment I stopped looking for someone to guide me through America was the moment I started feeling at home in it.
Working life in America.
If marriage is where emotions are tested, work in America is where identity is tested. The first week at my job in the United States, I smiled more than I spoke. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I was calculating every sentence before releasing it. Workplace English is different from daily English. It is efficient.
Direct.
Sometimes surprisingly informal. On my second day, a colleague said, "Feel free to push back if you disagree." Push back? My brain translated it literally for half a second. Then I understood. It meant, speak your opinion. In many cultures, disagreeing with a supervisor feels risky. In American work culture, respectful disagreement can signal confidence and critical thinking. That difference shook me at first. During meetings, people spoke clearly and quickly. They used phrases like, "Let's circle back," "What's the bottom line?" and "Can we align on this?" At home, I replayed those phrases in my head like language exercises. But beyond vocabulary, there was something deeper happening.
Work culture ir valus initiative. If you see a problem, you propose a solution.
If you want growth, you ask for feedback. Silence can be interpreted as lack of engagement, even if you are simply being cautious. That realization forced me to stretch. One afternoon, my manager asked, "What's your long-term goal?" In my mind, I thought stability, safety, not making mistakes. But I knew that answer would not reflect ambition. So I practiced honesty in simple English. I want to grow my communication skills and take more responsibility. Clear.
Direct. Slightly nerveux.
He nodded. Good. Let's create opportunities for that. That conversation changed something inside me. In marriage, I had been learning to walk beside my partner instead of behind him. At work, I was learning to stand without hiding. There is research in organizational psychology showing that autonomy increases motivation and performance. When people feel they have influence over their tasks, engagement rises. American workplaces often emphasize this autonomy. But autonomy can feel heavy if you are not used to it. The first time I led a small project meeting, my hands were cold. My voice felt too soft. I began with a simple sentence, "Thank you for joining. Today, we'll review the timeline and next steps." Short.
Structured.
Calm. I had written it down beforehand. Preparation is not weakness. It is strategy. As the meeting continued, I realized something powerful. No one expected perfection. They expected clarity. When someone interrupted me with a question I did not fully understand, instead of pretending, I said, "Could you clarify that?" That sentence became my ally. Back at home, the impact of work growth began to appear. I was no longer waiting for direction in every decision. Exposure to American workplace culture, with its emphasis on ownership and initiative, slowly influenced my mindset in marriage too. One evening, while discussing household finances, I said, "I reviewed our budget. I think we can adjust this category." He looked at me differently. Not surprised. Respectful. Confidence at work translated into confidence at home. There is a concept in psychology called self-efficacy, the belief that you can handle challenges. Each small success at work strengthened that belief. And when self-efficacy increases, dependency decreases. Not emotional dependency. Unhealthy dependency. I began to see partnership more clearly. Partnership is not dividing tasks because one person is stronger. It is dividing tasks because both are capable. Work life also exposed me to regional diversity across America. Colleagues from the Midwest spoke gently and valued politeness. Colleagues from the East Coast were faster, more direct. Some prioritized work-life balance strongly. Others embraced long hours for career growth. The United States is not one culture. It is many microcultures layered together. Understanding that reduced my insecurity. When someone spoke quickly, it was not personal. It was regional style. When someone was brief in email, it was not coldness. It was efficiency. That same logic applied to marriage. When my partner communicated directly, it was not harshness. It was clarity shaped by culture. Work became my second classroom. I practiced active listening. I learned to summarize points before responding. So what you're saying is, that phrase improved both professional meetings and emotional conversations at home. Interestingly, research shows that couples who apply workplace communication skills, such as structured feedback and clear goal setting, often reduce conflict. Skills transfer across environments. As my English improved, not dramatically but steadily, something else changed, my internal narrative. Instead of thinking I am behind, I began thinking I am adapting. Instead of asking, can I survive here? I asked, how can I grow here? Growth did not eliminate challenges. But it shifted perspective. Marriage felt less like a rescue system and more like a partnership platform. We were not surviving America separately. We were building within it. And perhaps the most surprising lesson from working in the United States was this. Respect is not automatically given. It is demonstrated through contribution.
Note loud contribution.
Not aggressive. Consistent. Clear. Responsible. The same applies in marriage. You do not earn partnership by disappearing. You earn it by showing up. Work did not just give me income. It gave me voice. And once I found my voice in one room, it became easier to use it in every room. Papers, pressure, and patience. If you want to test a marriage, don't start with romance. Start with paperwork. Nothing reveals emotional maturity faster than government forms. Living and working in the United States means systems.
Structure de système.
Immigration forms, tax documents, health insurance policies, state regulations. Each paper carries deadlines. Each deadline carries consequences. And when English is not your first language, each line can feel like a legal puzzle. The first time I held an immigration document in my hands, I felt small again. So many sections. So many instructions. Words like eligibility, compliance, supporting evidence.
I read slowly.
Carefully. Twice.
My partner s'ad bezid me.
Calm.
Familiar with the system.
I watched how easily he moved through the pages, and a quiet comparison began inside me. He belongs here. I am applying to belong. That thought is dangerous in a marriage. Because paperwork is temporary. But insecurity can become permanent if you don't confront it. We spent evenings at the dining table organizing documents. Birth certificates. Employment letters. Bank statements. Proof of address. Each item represented stability. Each missing detail triggered stress. Stress changes behavior. Research in stress psychology shows that under bureaucratic pressure, people become more irritable and less patient.
Cognitive ressource narrow. You focus on threat, not connection.
That is exactly what happened. One night, after realizing we had filled one section incorrectly, I felt panic rise quickly. We have to redo everything, I said, my voice sharper than intended. He answered, it's fixable. But my brain had already entered alarm mode. When your legal status depends on accuracy, small mistakes feel catastrophic. I don't want to mess this up, I said quietly.
I don't want to be the reason something goes wrong.
There it was again. Responsibility mixed with fear. Paperwork became symbolic. It was not just forms. It was belonging. It was legitimacy. It was future security for our family. In those moments, partnership was tested not through emotion, but through endurance. He suggested dividing tasks. I'll handle this section. You review that one.
At first, I resisted.
I wanted to prove I could manage everything. But that desire came from pride, not efficiency. Partnership is not about proving independence. It is about distributing pressure. We created a system. Timers for focused work. Short breaks. Double-checking each other's sections.
Calm voices only.
If tension rose, We paused. Simple rules.
Clear structure.
Interestingly, the same communication skills I practiced at work began helping here. Instead of saying, "This is too much," I said, "I feel overwhelmed by this section."
Can we review it together? Specific request.
No blame. He responded differently too. Instead of assuming I was overreacting, he asked, "Which part feels confusing?" That question reduced defensiveness immediately. There is a concept in relationship science called co-regulation. It means partners help stabilize each other's emotional states. When one is anxious, the other provides calm.
Note trop contrôle.
Through presence. During those paperwork months, we practiced co-regulation without naming it. If my tone rose, he lowered his. If he felt frustrated, I slowed down the pace. We were learning something deeper than compliance with policy. We were learning emotional coordination under pressure. Living in America also exposed us to policy changes, news discussions about immigration, and public debates. Hearing those conversations sometimes triggered insecurity. Even if our situation was stable, the environment felt uncertain. Uncertainty magnifies small disagreements. One evening, after reading a news article about policy updates, I felt sudden fear.
What if rules change?
I asked. He answered honestly, "We can't control everything. We control our preparation." That sentence grounded me.
Contrôle what you can.
Prepare well. Stay informed. Support each other. Paperwork forced patience.
Note dramatique patience.
Practical patience. Forms require accuracy. Systems require order. Emotions require breathing space. Over time, I stopped seeing myself as an outsider trying to qualify. I began seeing myself as an active participant in a legal process. Language helped too. Instead of saying, "I'm scared," I learned to say, "I feel uncertain about this step." That subtle shift moved me from helplessness to problem solving. Precision in language reduces emotional chaos. When approval finally came, an official letter confirming progress, I held it quietly.
Note with loud celebration.
With deep relief. It was not just legal progress. It was relational growth. Because during those stressful months, we did not break. We adjusted. Paperwork did not divide us. It revealed our patterns. Where I rushed, he stabilized. Where he hesitated, I organized. Where fear appeared, we spoke it out loud. Marriage taught me something unexpected during that season. Partnership is not romantic during paperwork. It is practical. It is patient. It is repetitive.
You sit together.
You read carefully.
You correct gently.
You breathe. And maybe that is real love. Not dramatic declarations, but shared responsibility over forms that decide your future. Pressure did not disappear, but our reaction changed. And that made all the difference. The argument that saved us. It wasn't a dramatic movie fight. No doors slammed. No bags packed. No one shouted, "I'm leaving." It was quieter than that, which made it more dangerous. The argument that almost broke us started on a normal Tuesday evening. Dishes in the sink. Emails still unanswered. A small misunderstanding about schedules. He thought I would handle something. I thought he would. Simple. Ordinary. Avoidable. But beneath that small confusion was something heavier that had been building for months. I said, "You always assume I'll adjust." He replied, "I feel like I'm carrying more than you see." 2 sentences. 2 different realities. Silence filled the room.
Note peaceful silence. Défensive silence.
Here is what I've learned. Most marriage conflicts are not about the topic. They are about perception. Research from relationship psychology shows that couples argue not because of facts, but because of unmet emotional needs hidden under those facts. Under my sentence was, "I want recognition." Under his sentence was, "I want appreciation." But we didn't say that at first. Instead, we went into patterns. I became quiet and sharp. He became logical and distant. I felt unheard. He felt accused.
And then something unusual happened.
Instead of continuing the cycle, he said softly, "I don't want to win this." That sentence interrupted the momentum. I looked at him and answered honestly in slow English, "I don't want to lose us." The room changed. There is a concept in neuroscience called emotional flooding. When heart rate rises above a certain level during conflict, logical reasoning decreases. The brain shifts into defense mode. In that state, you are not solving problems. You are protecting ego. I realized we were close to flooding. So we paused. Not dramatically. Just quietly. We sat down at the table. No phones.
No distractions.
He asked, "What are you really afraid of?" That question cut deeper than the argument. I took a breath. "I'm afraid I'm invisible here," I said. "In this country. In this language. And sometimes, in this marriage." The words were simple. The truth was heavy. He didn't interrupt. "I'm afraid," he said after a moment, "that I'm failing you. That I'm not supporting enough." 2 fears. Both hidden. Both reasonable. Suddenly, the fight was no longer about schedules. It was about identity. Marriage in a new country amplifies insecurity. When one partner is adapting to language and culture, power dynamics can shift unconsciously. The adapting partner may feel dependent. The native partner may feel responsible. If not discussed, those roles harden. That night, we decided to say uncomfortable truths without decoration. "I don't need you to fix everything," I said. "I need you to notice effort." He nodded. "And I need you to tell me when you're overwhelmed before it builds."
Direct.
Clear. No sarcasm. We tried something practical next. Instead of debating who does more, we wrote down responsibilities. Not as competition. As clarity. Work.
Finance.
Household tasks. Emotional support.
Futur planning.
Seeing it visually changed the energy. It was not about fairness in numbers. It was about awareness. Interestingly, research from family studies shows that couples who explicitly define expectations reduce recurring conflict. Ambiguity creates assumptions. Assumptions create resentment.
Clarity reduce imagination.
Then came the most important moment. He reached across the table and said, "I don't want to lead you.
I want to walk with you."
That sentence answered the question that had been echoing since the beginning of our journey. Lead or walk together? Walking together does not mean equal strength every day. Some days, one carries more weight. But it means equal dignity. I realized something painful but freeing. I had been measuring love through sacrifice. The more I adjusted, the more I thought I was proving commitment. But silent sacrifice often turns into silent resentment. Partnership requires visible effort, not invisible endurance. We created one small rule that night. If tension rises, we name the emotion before discussing the issue. I feel overwhelmed. I feel unappreciated.
I feel incertain. Émotion first. Solution second.
This method aligns with emotional regulation theory. When feelings are labeled, defensive reactions decrease. The conversation becomes collaborative instead of competitive. That argument did not destroy us. It exposed us. It forced us to remove polite masks and speak in honest, simple English.
No advanced vocabulary. No dramatic speech.
Just truth. I'm scared. I care. I don't want distance. I choose us. Sometimes, the argument that feels like the end becomes the beginning of maturity. Because conflict, when handled with awareness, strengthens attachment instead of breaking it. That Tuesday night did not fix everything. But it changed how we fight. Not to defeat.
Not to escape.
But to understand. And maybe that is the real meaning of partnership. Not avoiding storms, but learning how to stand in them without letting go. The season of distance, when love feels quiet. Not every challenge in marriage looks like a fight. Some challenges look like silence. After that Tuesday argument, something softened between us. We understood each other more clearly. We communicated better. We were more intentional. And yet, a new season arrived that neither of us expected.
Distance. Not physical distance. Emotional distance.
It began slowly, almost invisibly. Work intensified for both of us. My responsibilities expanded. His hours became longer. We were building stability in the United States, careers, credit history, community, long-term plans. From the outside, everything looked successful. Inside, something was fading. We still talked. But conversations became logistical. Did you pay the bill?
What time is your meeting?
Can you pick up groceries? Efficient. Responsible. Mature. But not intimate. One night, I realized something uncomfortable. We had become a team. But we had stopped being lovers. Marriage experts often describe this stage as functional coexistence.
The relationship works.
It runs. It performs. But emotional connection weakens because energy is directed outward, toward survival, achievement, and stability. For immigrants especially, this stage can be intense. The pressure to succeed in a new country consumes attention. Emotional nourishment feels secondary. I noticed it first in small ways. We stopped laughing as much. We stopped touching casually. We stopped asking curious questions.
Nothing was wrong.
And that was the problem. Because when nothing is obviously wrong, no one feels urgency to repair. One evening after dinner, I asked him, "Do you feel close to me lately?" He paused. That pause told me everything. "I feel tired," he said honestly.
Note défensive.
Not dismissive. Just tired. And I understood. But understanding does not eliminate loneliness. There is a quiet ache when the person next to you feels slightly far away. It is subtle. No drama. Just a thin layer of space. I asked myself a difficult question. Had I also pulled away? The answer was yes. I had become independent in a protective way. I was proving to myself that I could function strongly in this country. I minimized my needs. I handled stress alone. I stopped sharing small insecurities. Strength can sometimes build walls. There is a concept in attachment psychology. When stress increases, people lean either toward pursuit or withdrawal. In that season, we both withdrew.
Not out of anger. Out of exhaustion. So what do you do when love feels quiet? First, you resist panic.
Quiet does not mean dead. It can mean overwhelmed. Instead of accusing him of distance, I tried something different. One Saturday morning, without explanation, I made coffee and sat next to him on the couch. No phone.
No agenda.
I asked, "What's been heavy on your mind lately?" Not "Why are you distant?"
Not do you still care. Just curiosity.
He talked about pressure at work. About responsibility. About wanting to provide security. About feeling like he had to hold everything together. I realized something painful and beautiful at the same time. While I feared emotional abandonment, he feared failure. Two different anxieties. Both silent. I shared mine next. "I've been afraid that we're becoming roommates," I admitted.
Efficient roommate. Eloqued softly.
"That's not what I want," he said. Sometimes, reconnection begins not with romance, but with honesty. We decided to rebuild closeness intentionally. Not dramatically. Practically. We created one ritual. Every Sunday evening, we would ask each other 3 questions. What felt good this week? What felt stressful? How can I support you better next week?
Simple English. Simple structure.
Deep effect. Research shows that couples who maintain weekly emotional check-ins report stronger long-term satisfaction. The key is consistency, not intensity. The first few Sundays felt awkward. We weren't used to structured vulnerability. But gradually, something shifted. We started noticing each other again. He noticed when I was quiet after a hard day. I noticed when his shoulders were tense from work stress. Physical closeness returned slowly too. Not because we forced it, but because emotional safety returned first. That season taught me something unexpected. Love does not disappear suddenly. It erodes quietly when unattended, but it can also regenerate quietly when nourished. There was one moment I will never forget. After one of our Sunday conversations, he said, "Thank you for not giving up when it felt distant." I realized then that persistence in marriage is not loud. It is gentle, consistent, unseen by others. We often expect passion to carry relationships forever. But in long-term partnership, discipline sometimes protects love more than emotion. Choosing to sit, choosing to ask, choosing to listen, choosing to stay curious. These choices rebuild what stress erodes. And here is the truth I want to share with you. Distance is not always a warning sign of the end. Sometimes it is a signal to adjust attention. Like a plant that looks dull not because it is dying, but because it needs water. In that quiet season, we learned to water intentionally. We learned that partnership is not only about surviving conflict. It is about protecting connection during calm. Because calm can be deceptive. And in marriage, neglect often hides behind busyness. We did not solve distance overnight. But we faced it together. Not with fear. With effort.
And slowly, the Kiefeltoir-Magen.
Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady. Maybe that is what lasting love really sounds like. When success tests a marriage more than struggle. Most people think hardship is the biggest threat to a relationship.
Financial stress. Immigration paperwork. Cultural ajustement.
Language barriers.
Yes, those things test you.
But no one warned me that success could test us even more. After years of adapting to life in the United States, something shifted. My confidence grew.
My English improved.
My work stabilized. Opportunities started appearing in ways they hadn't before. For the first time since moving here, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I felt capable,
Indépende.
valuable. And that's when a new tension quietly entered our marriage. Not because he was unsupportive. Not because I became arrogant. But because growth changes dynamics. When we first arrived, I leaned on him more. He understood systems better. He navigated confidently. I was learning. Over time, that balance adjusted. I began making bold decisions. I initiated new projects. I expanded socially and professionally. I spoke up more, in meetings, in community spaces, even at home. At first, it felt empowering. Then one evening, during a small disagreement, he said something that surprised me.
You don't need me the way you used to.
It wasn't accusation. It was vulnerability. That sentence stopped me. Because it revealed something I hadn't considered. Growth can accidentally create emotional distance if reassurance doesn't grow alongside independence. I had been so focused on proving strength that I forgot to express appreciation. Success can silently communicate, I'm fine alone, even when that's not the intention. That night, I asked him gently, do you feel replaced? He hesitated. Sometimes, he admitted. Not replaced, just less necessary. There it was. A fear I never meant to create. In many traditional narratives, partnership is unconsciously linked to dependence. When one partner grows rapidly, the other can feel destabilized, even if they are proud. Research in relationship psychology shows that transitions, even positive ones like promotions, achievements, or personal development, increase conflict risk if identity roles are not renegotiated. Marriage is not static. It must update as people evolve. I realized something humbling. I had grown stronger externally, but I had not clearly communicated that I still chose him internally. Strength without reassurance can feel like detachment. So I changed something simple but powerful. Instead of only sharing achievements, I began sharing doubts again. I'm nervous about this project. I don't know if I handled that conversation well.
What do you think?
Not because I was incapable, but because partnership is not about neediness, it's about inclusion. He relaxed gradually.
Because inclusion restore significance.
One night, we had a deeper conversation about identity. I don't want to lead, he said, but I also don't want to disappear. That sentence captured something important. In healthy partnership, neither person leads permanently. Neither person fades permanently. Roles move.
Strength rotate.
Support shifts. But visibility must remain equal. We discussed ambition openly. What does success mean to you? What does it mean to me? Where do we want to grow individually? Where do we want to grow together? We noticed something subtle. We had clear individual goals. But we hadn't updated our shared goals in a while. That creates parallel lives instead of intertwined ones. So we created new shared visions. Travel plans.
Financial milestone. Personal gross commitment.
Community involvement. When couples plan together, they psychologically anchor growth inside the relationship rather than outside it. Success stopped feeling like separation. It started feeling like expansion. There was one moment that deeply moved me. After I achieved something meaningful professionally, he looked at me and said, "I'm proud of you. Not just for what you did, but for who you're becoming." That distinction mattered.
Because success fade. Identity remin.
I answered honestly, "I'm still becoming with you."
Not away from you.
And that was the truth. Marriage is not threatened by growth. It is threatened by silent insecurity around growth. When one partner evolves, the other must feel invited, not compared. I also had to confront something in myself. Part of my drive came from fear. Fear of losing stability. Fear of being dependent again. Fear of invisibility in a foreign system. Ambition can be protective. But if unchecked, it can prioritize achievement over connection. So we made one small adjustment. When something significant happens, good or bad, we tell each other first. Not social media. Not colleagues. Not friends. Us first. That simple habit reinforces emotional primacy. In marriage, priority communicates value. Over time, his confidence evolved too. He pursued interests he had postponed. He invested in personal development. He stopped measuring himself against my progress. Because growth is not competition. It is collaboration. Looking back, I see that success asked us a deeper question than hardship ever did. If you no longer need each other for survival, do you still choose each other for companionship? Our answer became clearer with time. Yes.
Not because of weakness.
Not because of dependency. But because partnership multiplies growth. Walking together does not mean walking at identical speed. It means adjusting pace without losing connection. And perhaps the real test of marriage is not whether you survive difficulty. It is whether you stay united when life finally becomes stable. Success did not separate us. It refined us. It forced us to redefine partnership not as necessity, but as daily, conscious choice. The day I realized love is a decision, not a feeling. There was no crisis.
No dramatic fight.
No betrayal.
No major life event. Just an ordinary Wednesday.
And yet, that was the day something shifted permanently inside me.
I woke up feeling neutral.
Not unhappy. Not excited. Not deeply connected. Not distant. Just steady. And for the first time, I noticed something quietly unsettling. The butterflies were gone.
Not the respect.
Not the care.
Not the partnership.
Just the intensity. If you've been married long enough, you know this stage.
The chemistry settle.
The unpredictability softens. The spark becomes a warm light instead of fireworks. But no one prepares you for the psychological adjustment that comes with that shift.
In the beginning, love feel automatique.
You miss each other constantly.
You crave conversation.
You feel chosen every day without question. Years later, love feels quieter. You coordinate schedules.
You discuss finance.
You solve problems. You share responsibilities. It's mature. It's stable. But it's not dramatic. And on that Wednesday morning, I caught myself wondering,
is this enough?
That question scared me. Not because I wanted something else, but because I realized how easily culture trains us to equate intensity with authenticity. Movies celebrate passion. Social media celebrates highlight moments. Stories celebrate extremes. But long-term partnership lives mostly in the ordinary. I didn't say anything at first. Instead, I observed myself. Was I dissatisfied with him? No. Was I bored? Not really. Was I unfulfilled? Also no. So what was this feeling? It was the absence of emotional spikes. And I realized something important. Calm can feel unfamiliar when you've been conditioned to expect emotional highs. That evening, while washing dishes together, I asked him gently, "Do you ever miss the beginning?" He smiled. Sometimes, he admitted, but I like this version of us more. I paused. Why? I asked. Because now I know it's real, he said. It's not excitement. It's choice. That word stayed with me. Choice. There is a theory in psychology called the investment model. It suggests that commitment grows not just from satisfaction, but from investment, time, effort, shared history, emotional energy.
Feeling fluctuate. Investment accumulate.
On that Wednesday, I realized something humbling. In the early years, I loved him because of how I felt. Now, I loved him because of who we had built. There's a difference. Feelings are reactive. Decisions are intentional. And intentional love is quieter, but stronger. I thought about all the moments no one sees.
The late night conversation after l'ondaise.
The silent support during stressful weeks. The forgiveness after misunderstandings. The teamwork during uncertainty. None of those moments are dramatic, but they form the architecture of trust. Later that night, sitting on the couch, I said something simple.
I don't always feel fireworks anymore. He looked softly.
Me neither. There was no panic in his voice.
Just acceptance.
And that's okay, he added, because I still choose you. That sentence anchored something inside me. We don't talk enough about this stage of marriage. The stage where love transforms from emotion to commitment. Where attraction becomes respect. Where excitement becomes safety. Where passion becomes stability. It's less cinematic, but it's more sustainable. I also confronted a hard truth about myself. Part of me had been unconsciously chasing intensity, even in small arguments or emotional waves, because intensity reassures you that something is alive. But peace can also mean alive. Peace can mean secure. Peace can mean mature. So I asked myself a deeper question. If the excitement disappeared completely tomorrow, would I still stay? My answer surprised me. Yes. Because staying is no longer about emotional thrill. It's about alignment. It's about shared values. It's about mutual growth. It's about walking side by side, even when the road is predictable. Marriage taught me something unexpected.
Love as a feeling is beautiful.
Love as a decision is powerful. And powerful love outlasts beautiful love. The next morning, I did something small but symbolic. I wrote him a short note and left it on the kitchen counter. Thank you for choosing me on ordinary days. That sentence meant more than any dramatic confession. Because ordinary days make up most of life. Later that evening, he hugged me longer than usual.
No grand speech. No big révélation. Juste présence.
And in that quiet embrace, I understood something clearly.
Fireworks impress.
But steady light guides. I no longer fear the calm. Because calm means we are not fighting for survival. We are not chasing validation.
We are not proving anything. We are simply living.
Together. And maybe the strongest marriages are not the loudest ones. They are the ones where two people keep choosing each other, especially when nothing dramatic is happening. On that Wednesday, I stopped waiting for a feeling to confirm love. And I started honoring the decision that sustains it. Walking together, the meaning I finally understand. If you had asked me years ago what marriage would teach me, I might have said patience. Or compromise. Or responsibility. All true. But incomplete. Marriage did not just teach me how to live with another person. It taught me how to see myself clearly. When I first moved to the United States, I thought partnership meant stability. Two people building a safer future. Two incomes. Shared goals. A plan. Later, during our conflicts, I thought partnership meant communication.
Learning how to argue without destroying connection.
During our quiet season, I thought partnership meant effort. Scheduling check-ins. Protecting emotional closeness. During our growth season, I thought partnership meant adjustment. Allowing space for evolution without insecurity. And on that ordinary Wednesday, I learned partnership means choice. But now, standing here after all those seasons, I see something deeper.
Partnership means walking.
Not leading. Not following. Walking. Walking implies movement. It assumes there will be terrain changes. Sometimes uphill. sometimes smooth, sometimes uncertain. Walking also implies pace awareness. You cannot walk together if one person sprints ahead without looking back. You cannot walk together if one person refuses to move. You adjust.
You slow down.
You wait.
You encourage. You some team lean.
Living and working in America intensified that metaphor for me. This country rewards independence, productivity, achievement,
self-definition.
And those are powerful values. But marriage reminds you that independence without interdependence can become isolation. There were moments I wanted to prove I could succeed alone. Moments he wanted to prove he could carry everything alone. But alone never strengthened us. Transparency did. There is something humbling about admitting.
I need reassurance.
I feel insecure. I'm overwhelmed. I'm proud of you. I'm afraid. I'm grateful. These are not dramatic English phrases. They are simple. But simple honesty builds durable connection. If I look back at our journey, the hardest moments were not caused by lack of love. They were caused by unspoken fear. Fear of invisibility.
Fear of inadequacy. Fear of losing identity.
Fear of not being needed. Once fear had language, it lost power. And that is one of the greatest lessons marriage gave me. Silence creates distance. Language creates bridge. Not perfect language. Not poetic language. Just honest language. There's a memory that captures everything for me. We were walking through a park one autumn evening.
Leaf changing.
Air cool.
Nothing dramatic happening.
He reached for my hand naturally. No announcement. No symbolism.
Just instinct.
And I realized something quietly profound. After all the adjustments, conflicts, growth, distance, and rediscovery, the simplest gesture still felt right. That's how I now measure partnership. Not by intensity. Not by perfection. Not by public image. But by whether holding hands still feels natural after storms. Marriage did not make me smaller. It did not limit ambition. It did not reduce individuality. It refined ego. It exposed patterns. It challenged defensiveness. It forced vulnerability. And in that process, it made both of us stronger separately and steadier together. If you are listening to this and wondering whether marriage is about leading or walking together, here's what I've learned. Leadership shifts. Sometimes you lead when the other is tired. Sometimes you follow when the other is stronger.
Sometimes you pose together.
But permanent hierarchy weakens intimacy. Walking together requires mutual respect. Respect means recognizing that both journeys matter.
My dream matter.
His dreams matter. Our shared dreams matter. And none of them cancel the others. Marriage also taught me that love is not self-erasure. It is not silent endurance. It is not constant sacrifice. It is collaboration with boundaries. Support without disappearance.
Commitment without control.
And perhaps the most unexpected lesson of all. You do not marry a finished person. You marry a developing human. And you agree to grow at overlapping speeds. Some years you will feel synchronized.
Some years you will feel slightly out of rhythm.
The key is not perfect harmony. It is willingness to recalibrate. Today, if someone asks me what marriage taught me, I answer differently. It taught me emotional literacy. It taught me humility. It taught me courage in small conversations.
It taught me that love is quiété, and stronger than imagined.
Most importantly, it taught me that partnership is not proven in perfect seasons. It is proven in adjustment seasons, in apology, in listening, in staying curious, in choosing again. If I could speak to my younger self, the version of me who arrived in this country uncertain and afraid, I would say, you will not lose yourself in marriage. You will discover parts of yourself you could not access alone. And if I could leave you with one final thought, it would be this. Do not ask who leads. Ask who is willing to keep walking. Because in the end, marriage is not about winning arguments, avoiding distance, or chasing fireworks. It is about two people deciding again and again to move forward, side by side. And that decision, repeated quietly over years, becomes something stronger than emotion. It becomes partnership. If you've stayed with me until this moment, then you already know. This was never just a story about marriage. It was a story about identity, about immigration, about emotional growth, about what happens when two imperfect people try to build a life in the United States while still building themselves. Marriage taught me partnership. For a long time, I thought partnership meant security. Then I thought it meant communication. Then sacrifice. Then strength.
Now we understand something deeper. Partnership means evolution, without abandonment.
It means growth, without competition. It means walking, without keeping score.
Living and working in America change you.
The pressure to succeed, to perform, to prove yourself, it can harden you. It can make independence feel safer than vulnerability. But marriage forced me to soften in places I didn't even know were rigid. It forced me to ask, when success comes, will you still choose each other? When feelings quiet down, will you still choose each other?
When identity shift, will you still work together?
And maybe that's the real question for all of us. Not who leads, but who stays. Not who sacrifices more, but who keeps choosing the partnership. If this story resonated with you, if you're navigating marriage, relationships, emotional growth, or life in a new country, then this channel is for you. Here, we don't just talk about English. We practice real emotional English, the kind you use in difficult conversations, in quiet moments, in honest reflections. Because fluency isn't just about grammar. It's about expressing who you truly are. And in 2026, that's the kind of English that matters most. On this channel, you'll find
Real English Story Practice,
marriage and relationship growth conversations, emotional vocabulary for real-life situations, immigrant life reflections in the United States, deep storytelling that helps you think, not just listen. If you've ever felt the tension between independence and partnership, if you've ever wondered whether love is a feeling or a decision, if you're building a life while still building yourself,
you belong here. So here's my invitation to you.
Subscribe. Not just to a channel, but to a journey. Like this video if it made you pause. Comment below, do you believe marriage is about leading, or walking together? I read every comment. And your perspective might inspire the next story. Because this isn't just my journey anymore. It's ours. And in the next episode, I'm going to share something even more personal, the moment I almost walked away, and why I didn't.
See you there.